lady couldn't make it, but she can benefit from the online course, so that's good. So it's the last week, isn't it? Final week. So have you been managing to keep up with the work and do some home practice? Most people, yeah. And we've got the feedback form at the end, so really appreciate some good, honest feedback, you know, about what you've thought about the course and any comments on how you've benefited. I think most of you have kind of come up to me and had a chat with me and talked about how you are benefiting from it and have been benefiting from it. So, yes, and it's the last week, so we've done your DAS tests again, so we'll let you know the scores and you can write them in your workbook. Just before we break after the teaching points and before the yoga, Jenny's going to come and give you all of your scores, so you can see the change of that. And really, so this last session, in your workbook, you can see that it's very much about the future and about setting new goals and setting new ambitions for the future, kind of beyond this course really, because of course this is just the beginning. It doesn't stop here, it just starts here really. So, and what I will make available for you to help you with that, I'm going to talk more about the journey and goals and things in a minute, but you will have this course available online. I've only recorded weeks 5 to 8, so the last 4 weeks. But in the next course, which begins in January, and is already full actually, I'll record the first 4 weeks. Yeah, that's fine. So you'll have access to the course online, so you can go through and you can revise and you can kind of revisit it really. Of course, you've got all the resources that I've given you. And also I'm setting up the Friday yoga class, which would be perfect for you guys. I mean, it's coincidental in many ways, but kind of been inspired by this work, I guess. So I urge you to join something like a yoga class or something that will keep you practicing, that will keep you centered and gives a sense of community and support as well. And there are other courses that I do, so hopefully you'll all be on the mailing list now. So as and when I do other courses, I do courses about building our inner power and resilience and all these things that you may well find useful. You should be getting little notices of them. So this session is about moving beyond, looking to the future and the goals and the journey ahead really. And I've got this nice poem by David White. It's called Start Close In. Start close in, don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way of starting the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To find another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes a private ear listening to another. Start right now. Take a small step. A step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing close in, the step you don't want to take. So we're starting this journey, and all journeys start with a small step. Even the biggest journey starts with the smallest step. And these are goals. Each step is a goal along the way. And the journey is a series of smaller steps. The bigger journey, wherever you're going to, is a series of smaller steps, of smaller goals along the way to get to where you're going. And remember to enjoy the journey too. I think that's important. So the journey can be enjoyed, and sometimes the journey can be difficult. Let's not be unrealistic about this. We're embarking on a new way of being. Yeah? And any change like that, it kind of has to be difficult to be worthwhile. So there are going to be ups and downs. But if you are able to set yourself a goal that's positive, that's motivating, that will keep you focused on the journey, on completing the journey, on staying on the path, despite any ups and downs. And before I talk more about goals and setting goals, some of you may already know stuff about goal setting, maybe through your work or other things. But I'm going to teach you anyway. I wanted to talk about the journey and a way of looking at the journey. And I teach this in a lot of stuff that I do in my coaching and all sorts of things. It's called the hero's journey. Has anybody heard of that? The hero's journey. And has anybody seen Star Wars? Yeah, we've all seen Star Wars. Right, well, the hero's journey is the story behind Star Wars. The hero's journey is what inspired George Lucas to write Star Wars. The hero's journey is a book that was written by Joseph Campbell, a concept that a guy called Joseph Campbell came up with. He was a psychologist, I think he was a psychologist. But he basically wrote this thick book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And it's all about the hero's journey. And basically found that there's a basic pattern in many narratives, in many famous stories from all around the world, from the story of Jesus, from the story of Buddha, and the story of the Bhagavad Gita. Many kind of mythological stories have this same pattern, and he called it the hero's journey. So it's this basic pattern in life stories. And it starts off with the premise that there are 3 ways of being in the world. There are 3 life maps. So there's what's called the villager. So that's a way of being. We can be a villager, or we can be in the wasteland, or we can choose to take the hero's journey. Okay, so the villager is it's living according to expected norms, to society's expectations, to cultural expectations, to how our family maybe wanted us to live our lives. It's kind of seen as a shallow way of living. And it might be perfect 3-bedroom detached house, 2.3 kids, perfect husband, perfect car, perfect this, perfect that, perfect. But quite often in that, people can find emptiness. It can be an empty existence. Many people kind of stay there and live that life. But ultimately, we're all looking for deeper meaning. Okay. So there's the villager life, there's the wasteland, and this is the shadow side of the villager life. So, and it can lead to negative states, to negative ways of being, of thinking. It can lead to addictions. And it can lead to being cast out from society, kind of not feeling like we belong, or choosing not to belong, or for some reason it may be that we've got autism or something else like that, and we've kind of never really been let into that village life, that perfect kind of, society's version of perfect life, the village life. And your symptoms, whether they be anxiety, depression, or an illness, are telling you, I can't live in this straitjacket anymore. It's almost like your soul is bursting out. And this sense of being cast out into the wasteland can come from failure, or it can come from success. There are many people who have been so successful in their lives, they've achieved everything they've ever set out to achieve, they're so successful, and yet they feel completely empty. It's like they've put their ladder up against the wrong wall and climbed that their whole lives. And they get to the top and they realise, shit, this isn't what I wanted. Or it can be from failure or from illness. So we can be cast out into the wasteland. And then from there, well, either from the village life, because the Buddha, and Jesus really, these stories, these people did exist, whether we believe in Jesus being reincarnated or whatever, but these people definitely did exist. They were people in history, and they kind of had perfect lives. The Buddha was a very, very rich man. He was from a very rich, comfortable family, and he just said, there's no meaning in this life. And he cast himself out to be a very poor man, and he wandered around in the desert for years and years. Similar with Jesus, these very famous stories of these kind of mythological people. choose sometimes to cast themselves out because they realise that the village life isn't enough, or they can be cast out for other reasons. And then the third map, the third way of being in the world, is the hero's journey. So the hero's journey. And we receive a calling into a different way of being, into a different world, a different experience, a wake-up call. And by listening to this calling, it brings wholeness to our spirit. Our spirit is looking to open into the world, and it brings wholeness if we can hear this calling and follow this adventure to follow the path of the hero's journey, where we're the hero of our own story. So, what is your spirit looking to open to the world? Where is your life opening to now? And the paths of the hero's journey are something disrupts our ordinary existence. It can be our symptoms of depression, anxiety, a crisis. And it's like the Chinese definition of the word crisis. A crisis is just the end of an illusion. But something is waking us up. It disrupts our ordinary world. And disrupting the comfort of this presents us a challenge. It kind of throws out a calling to us. It throws our world off balance. And many people get this, but quite often people ignore it. They ignore it and they kind of go back to sleep in the village, kind of thing. But those of us who hear the calling, we may need a succession of callings. We may have had a number of things happen to us, but finally we've heard the calling. And we can refuse the call and kind of go back to a safe haven of the ordinary world, because by accepting the call and crossing the threshold, it requires us to make changes. To wake up to a new way of being. And then, so we hear the call, we accept the call, and as soon as we accept it, we find a mentor. Some kind of mentor that helps us gain confidence, that helps us gain insight, that helps us with advice, that helps us with training. It could be this course. Or it can even be something that we read, a book, a map, some special symbol, an object. It doesn't have to be a physical person. But as soon as we hear that call, something happens. It presents itself to us that helps us along the way. And then we have to cross the threshold. So there's a gateway that separates the ordinary world, the village life, from this new world, this special world that's opening itself up to us. And we have to find the courage to cross that threshold. Sometimes it's external forces that push us into that. Sometimes it's just our own internal forces that propel us into accepting the new world that's ahead of us. And then inevitably, as soon as we cross that threshold, as soon as we accept that new world ahead of us, there's going to be tests, there's going to be enemies, there's going to be kind of people that present themselves to kind of stop us doing that. But there's going to be allies, there's going to be friends, there's going to be sidekicks, people that we can trust. Because inevitably, as we make changes in our life, there are going to be people that lose out from that. I mean lose out in a very superficial way. But there are people in our lives that got a vested interest in perhaps not, in us not changing. Because people don't like change, they're a bit scared that if we change, something might change for them. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes even people that we love might not want us to change. So these are the tests that we have to cross, because by crossing that threshold and committing to that journey, it's going to be so worth it. And then usually there is an ordeal. We delve into the depths of change and there's an ordeal. We have to face our greatest fears. So we engage in some kind of central crisis where we face our greatest fear and we confront our most difficult challenge. And we kind of experience the death of the old self. And we're kind of reborn as a new self, a new world. It was Carl Jung, I think, who said, we spend the first half of our lives living our lives for other people, kind of other people's expectations. And we spend the second half of our lives living the life we want to live. So usually we have to face these fears and approach these depths. And this is a central magical stage of any journey. And we have resources and we have people along the way that can help us do that. But it's a challenge, you know, we need courage and we need to stick to it. And then ultimately the hero's journey is about the reward, the huge reward and transformation of sticking to that journey, of facing those challenges, surviving the death of the old self, if you like, overcoming our greatest fears, slaying the dragons, weathering the crisis of our heart. And then we earn this huge reward in our life. So greater knowledge or insight. And many stories, many films, you know, from Star Wars to Jaws to, if you look at a lot of the films, the classic films, they follow this story. So then we've got the reward and we've earned transformation and inner knowledge, or whatever it is that we have been rewarded with at the end of that journey. Then in the hero's journey, the hero makes their way back into the ordinary world. The true hero returns with the gift that they've been rewarded with to share that gift with others, or to heal a wounded land. And that gift could be love or wisdom, and just simply the experience of surviving your journey into the special world. So that's the hero's journey. And I thought it was such a nice kind of analogy for, you know, the journey that we're on. And like I said at the beginning, it's so important that we learn to be able to set strong, positive goals that are going to help us keep on track and overcome those challenges easier than perhaps if we didn't have strong goals. So you've got some handouts on goal setting. Now, I don't know if Tiff could possibly look at turning the heating up. It's one thing I forgot to look at. So the control's usually over there on that, by that little counter thing. But if you can't find it, can you go and ask the woman? Yeah. Thanks very much, Tiff. It's a little bit chilly. I forgot to look at that in the rush of all of this. So goal setting is really important. And there are two acronyms here, SMART goals and POWER goals. But the importance of goals, there was a Harvard Business Review study, and this was people doing an MBA, so they're all going to be people who want to go into finance or earn a lot of money or whatever. But out of the thousands of people doing this MBA, they found that the people who had goals, and even just goals loosely set in your head, not written down on paper, were were more than twice as likely to be earning more money. I mean, that was obviously their goal on this MBA program. It's not everybody's goal. But the 13% that just had a loose goal, just saying to themselves in their head, were twice as likely to be earning more. But the 3% who wrote down clear written goals were earning 10 times as much at the end of the program. It shows you the importance of goals in this context of people doing MBAs who wanted to earn money or lots of money or whatever. So the importance of goals. You're going to be 10 times more likely to be successful if you write your goal down. Short, sweet, and smart goals. And we don't set goals for many reasons. Quite often we just don't realise the importance of it, or we don't know how to do it. Sometimes we have a fear of failure from it. But if we know how to write down goals in this really powerful, simple way, there's no reason why not to. And the first thing to remember, so I'm looking on this sheet here with the second slide at the bottom. The first thing to remember is that goals need to be positive. So if you can see these examples at the bottom, I've got some examples of kind of goals on the left that people typically set themselves. So we might set ourselves a goal of, I want to stop smoking, or I want to stop reacting to her when she challenges me or when she's rude to me. I want to stop reacting to her when she's rude to me. I want to stop being so scared of change. I don't want to feel intimidated by him. I don't want to be nervous in my meeting. They can seem like goals, but they're stated in the negative. Do you understand that? So I don't want to, I want to stop. So they're stated in the negative. You see, and it's powerful goals work on the unconscious mind, the deeper, vaster, more intelligent mind in many ways that's kind of running the shop a lot of the time. But the unconscious mind doesn't understand negatives. So all the unconscious mind sees, when we set ourselves a goal of, I want to stop smoking, I don't think you've done it, do you? You might just need, is there not? Yeah, the others aren't though, and then yeah. Yeah, ask her about it. That's great. Yeah. I want to stop smoking. All the unconscious mind hears is smoking, 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 smoking. I want to smoke. So we need to state goals in the positive. So instead of I want to stop smoking, I want to live a long and healthy life. Instead of I want to stop reacting to him when he challenges me, we need to say it as I want to stay calm and act wisely or maturely. And instead of I want to stop being so scared of change, perhaps I want to see the positive benefit in change. So we need to learn, the first thing we need to learn is to be able to state goals in the positive. And then, if you go on to the next slide, because this is, I do a lot of this kind of thing in my, I do a training course on building emotional resilience, and I do a lot of work on goal setting in that. So it's just a brief snippet from that, really. So positive, and then the POWER acronym stands for positive, own part, where, when, with whom, which is really SMART goals, ecology and real. So own part, the O of power, is it within your own control? Because if we've got a goal of I want to be married in a year, it's kind of, it's dependent on somebody else, isn't it? It's not completely within our own control. So need to make sure that you ask yourself that question, is this within my control, or am I deferring responsibility to somebody else? And then we've got the SMART goals, so being realistic about where we want this goal, when we want it, so a time frame, and with whom perhaps we want it, who is involved. So being specific about the goal, making sure that it's attainable, and making sure that we're really clear on the specifics of the goal. And then the E of power is about ecology. So it's about, you know, if you could have your goal next week, would you honestly, truly take it? Absolutely. If it's a resounding yes, that's fine. But if it's a, I think so, there's something holding you back. So for example, if someone's goal is to run the London Marathon in 2 months' time, that goal might mean them spending far too much time away from their family. So it's kind of not ecological for them in the wider system of their life, because something's going to suffer that they're not happy with. So although they might want to run the marathon, they're not happy about spending so much time away from their family. So you need to make sure that you're congruent and that you're fully aligned with the goal. Ecology check. And then we need to make the goal as real and as realistic and as tangible as possible. I would advise you to read the SMART outcomes as a separate sheet in your own time. But in the SMART outcomes, it touches on this in the tangible section right at the end. So if you can connect to your goal, and this is what I think I do when I have goals, they become very real. I kind of take myself to the future and imagine when I've achieved that goal, what it's going to be like. What can I see around me? What can I hear? What can I feel? You know, so what will that goal be like when I've achieved it? What will I be like? To make it like as real as possible so that you really connect to having almost experienced the goal and kind of have the feeling sense of what it's like to have experienced the goal. And then it becomes a very strong motivating goal. Okay, so it's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of goal setting. But on this sheet, creating SMART goals, we've got an example. You know, somebody might set a goal of, it's in the positive, so they've learnt to not set goals in the negative, but it might be, say, to get in shape. I want to get into shape. I want to get fit. Okay, you might think it's a goal, but it's a bit too vague. It's positive, so that's good. And it might be ecological, but we don't know yet. It depends on how they're going to do it. And it's certainly within their own control. Only they are responsible for getting fit. But it's missing out on some of the other things, some of the SMART aspects, the specifics of a goal. So a better way of stating that goal would be, okay, I'm going to join a health club and work out for 3 days a week. So it's specific about what they're going to do, where they're going to do it, and the time scale of were they going to do it? Is this making sense? You sort of, yeah. Okay, so probably it's a refresher for some of you, and no harm in having refreshers though, to remind ourselves of what's important. So, with that in mind, and what I've talked about on the hero's journey in terms of enemies that get in the way, or blocks or negative influences and resources that we might need along the way. In your workbook, if you can make sure that you write down your goal or goals, you know, following this program, post this program, and then start to have a think about what resources you've got, either yourself or what resources you can draw on to help you along the way, and then what might stop you, any kind of blocks or things that might get in the way of achieving your goal. And that can be other people, or, you know, events that might be coming up, or it can be our own self-sabotaging behaviour. You know, I want to get fit and I want to do this 3 times a week, but I can never get out of bed, you know, so we need to recognise what self-sabotaging behaviour we might have. So that's for you to complete. And also, I'll mention at the end, actually, we've got this personal evolution plan, which is just goals in a slightly different grid, really. So it's still about goals, and I'll touch on that at the end. So any questions? Anybody? No? We're happy to do the session. I'm going to get Jenny to come in.